So when we use Aspen or other simulation software to calculate the change in del H of our flowing streams under steady state conditions that will give us heat flow, the way it will do it is like pretend you had tabulated data in the steam tables. It will find the enthalpy of each of those streams under the specific temperature and pressure at the state in and out, multiplied by the molar flow rates, and calculate a duty in kilowatts or megawatts in that manner. We take the approach where we choose a path and we calculate the change in enthalpy considering that specific path. And we first going to change our inlet temperature to the temperature reference temperature where we have information available on our heat of reaction. Then we are going to calculate the contribution of the change in enthalpy due to our reaction, and just a reminder of those equations. The extent of the reaction can be calculated, of reaction J, can be calculated by considering any of the components that participate in that reaction, component I, by considering its change in molar flow rate divided by its stoichiometric coefficient in that reaction. And the heat of reaction, of course, calculated at a reference temperature. In most instances, we would have information available at 298. Just to remind yourselves of that. And now we can increase the temperature from our reference temperature where we accounted for our reaction to the outlet temperature of our reacting system. So we can, of course, to avoid that, and that is a more convenient approach. You will see if you do all the calculations, the equations that you end up with will be exactly the same as when you account for your heat of reaction by correcting that from a reference temperature to the actual temperature where you want to consider your reaction by using the del Cp of the reaction. Del Cp, we have a similar calculation to del H, and you should be familiar with that at this stage of your journey. If I have a CSTR that operates at temperature T, and I have multiple reactions denoted by the symbol J that can take place in the reactor, I need to remember that I will still have only one energy balance. However, in that second term where I account for the change in enthalpy due to the heat of reaction, I must make sure that I sum once, account for each of the reactions once by considering the extent of that reaction J in the reactor multiplied by its specific heat of reaction. For each of the components that flows into and out of my reactor, I can write a separate mole balance. So I will have the number of mole balances that can match the number of components. So the total change in a specific component I will be equal to the sum of its participation in the different reactions that takes place in that reactor. So I again once need to sum over each of the reactions by considering how component I will be converted or formed in that reactor multiplied by the volume of my reactor. So this is just the mole balance over a CSTR. Make sure that you are comfortable with getting to that equation. And I can now say that each of these little terms, the rate times volume, is how does that component I get changed by its participation in reaction J. So this allows me to write my epsilon term of each of the reactions, the reaction J, in terms of a specific component's rate participating in that reaction divided by the stoichiometric coefficient of that component or that reactant or that product as it participates in reaction J. As I say, you might need to pause here to make sure that you agree with the arithmetic. So now that we have a way of accounting for my epsilon in terms of the rates, I can complete my energy balance, and I don't want to have that first step where I have to go to a reference temperature and then from the reference temperature up. So I account for it by rather calculating my heat of reaction at the temperature where I am going to operate my reactor. So this therefore is epsilon of reaction J expressed in terms of that rates by using my mole balances. And the heat transfer in a CSTR, of course, is given by an overall heat transfer coefficient, the area available for heat transfer, and the difference between the utility temperature and the temperature of my reactor, of my contents of my reactor. So now we are going to take it back to the scenario where we have a single reaction taking place in my CSTR. And for the rest of the slides, I'm going to use the specific example where 2A reacts to form B plus C. So now my epsilon of that reaction, only one reaction taking place, will be equal to, and I want to express it in terms of my reactant A, will be equal to the change in the number of moles of F of A divided by its stoichiometric coefficient, which is -2. From my mole balance, I can write del Fa in terms of the conversion of component A and see that it's negative Fa naught times Xa. Make sure that you agree with me. Now divided by -2 multiplied by that del H of the reaction. And just for simplification, we are going to consider a reaction where del Cp of the reaction is equal to 0. So I can account for del H reaction as I have it at 298 Kelvin. So if we now consider the specific case where we have an adiabatic CSTR, right-hand side of my energy balance Q becomes equal to 0. So this is what we are going to use on the next few slides. I can manipulate my energy balance algebraically to make conversion of component A the subject of the equation as a function of temperature and the other parameters in my energy balance, or I can manipulate it to make temperature the subject of that equation as a function of conversion in this case and the other parameters in my energy balance. For both these equations, we realize that we get a linear relationship where I have a specific slope and I have a specific intercept in each case. And when we present it graphically, we are going to use this version. So we're going to have X values on our Y-axis and temperature values on our X-axis. However, it is still very convenient and intuitively it makes more sense to calculate temperature as a function of a range of X values. So X, we've got bounds. We know a conversion must be between 0 and 1. So for a range of X values, we can calculate our temperature, but when we present it graphically, we are going to put our X values on the Y-axis and our temperature values on our X-axis. So now we can use this first equation to understand what's happening to the shape of these energy balances that's drawn over here. So for instance, for the endothermic reaction, we notice that we have a negative slope. Does that make sense? We've got a positive heat of reaction due to the shape of my energy balance that is multiplied by a negative sign, and that makes sense. We have a negative slope over there. The bigger the value of my heat of reaction, the flatter this slope will be, the lower the slope will be over here. And I can do a similar kind of exploration for the exothermic reaction. For the exothermic reaction, I see I've got a positive slope, and it makes sense. If I have conversion, I expect an increase in my temperature. Heat of reaction is negative. It's multiplied by a negative, therefore this positive slope. The bigger the heat of reaction, once again, I will have a flatter slope. So what a flatter slope implies is that for a small conversion, so over here if the conversion is, let's say, this 30%, I will have this increase in temperature, but with a higher heat of reaction, with the same conversion, I am going to see a much bigger increase in temperature. The second equation is also very useful to tell us what's going to happen when X is equal to 0. So yes, we've got this intercept value that we can calculate this one over here by extrapolating all the way up and all the way down. But if I say when X is equal to 0, what will my temperature be? It immediately tells me that on the X is equal to 0 line, the temperature will be equal to my inlet temperature. So in this single equation of my energy balance, I have two unknowns. I have temperature and X, and I need an additional equation that represents my specific reactor to tell me what the conversion is going to be and what the temperature at which that reactor will operate will be. And for that, I need to use my CSTR mole balance. So here I've already written my mole balance in terms of X. I expressed the rate in terms of the concentration of component A, my rate constant, use the Arrhenius temperature dependence, express concentration as a function of conversion, and molar flow rates as a function of conversion. So I can now plot this very non-linear equation on the same axis set to give me an indication of where my conversion temperature pair will be. So of course we can say, but this is a job for Fsolve. I can just plug this into Fsolve, guess values for X and temperature and solve. Because of the very non-linear nature of my mole balance, Fsolve often struggles with these kinds of calculations unless you give it Jacobian matrices of the slopes of the different equations. For instance, if you have an initial guess value over there. So now for the endothermic reaction, it needs to find that solution, and for the exothermic, it needs to find that one. For the exothermic one, it's going to extrapolate using that initial slope that it's going to calculate, and it's not going to get to that solution. So the symptom of that is where you just get your initial guess values back as an answer. So it's always a very good idea, if you can, to plot your equations, especially if they are very non-linear, in order to make sure that at least your first guess will be in the correct range. So the shape of this mole balance is of course a function of the flow rate, volumetric flow rate, and it's a function of the activation energy and your pre-exponential constant. So it changes shape. You can manipulate it by changing the volume of your reactor and your Q value, but you will have no control over the activation energy and the pre-exponential constant that will also affect its shape. So for an exothermic reaction specifically, we can encounter the situation where I can actually have multiple solutions if I solve that energy balance, mole balance combination. And we can actually have legit steady state conditions where I operate at these points, so I have multiple steady states. Very unstable operating conditions, we want to avoid that. We cannot change our mole balance, but we can easily manipulate our energy balance. And by manipulate now, we of course mean that we change stuff, we change our design parameters. And the easiest way to manipulate your energy balance is to change your inlet temperature, so that when X is equal to 0, I move that, but I don't change anything about that slope over there, and I can move to a zone where I don't have multiple steady states. Another possible manipulation is by changing the slope, which in this case would really be a silly solution. I can increase the slope by increase the energy carrying capacity over there. So I can actually introduce an inert. I can't do anything about the heat of reaction, but I can change this by adding an inert that can absorb some of that energy, and that will also in this case move me out of multiple operation, but multiple steady state, but I will have a reactor with almost no conversion. If I now consider the non-adiabatic case, I have this extra term in my energy balance for heat transfer. However, I can still write an expression for X and temperature respectively, make them the subject of my energy balance, and my mole balance stays unchanged. So to illustrate what's happening to my energy balance and where it intercepts my mole balance, let's consider the fact that once again we have two linear equations. This is the one that's used to generate our plots. I manipulate the slope of that energy balance. So if I look at that, the slope is still going to be negative because that only depends on my heat of reaction and the shape of my energy balance. However, it's always going to increase because of that additional heat transfer term. And if I want to see what's going to happen to this intercept when X is equal to 0, my temperature at the outlet of a reactor can now not be the same as at the inlet. It depends on whether I have a warm utility or a cold utility. In this case, my utility temperature is warmer than T0, so even if I don't have any reaction, I will heat up the contents of my reactor to have a warmer outlet temperature when I have no conversion in my reactor.